The ice winds of Chronarch 7 howled through the settlement's defensive barriers, carrying with them the bitter cold that had claimed 3 Vryn warriors in the past lunar cycle alone. Jennifer huddled in her assigned quarters, her standard-issue thermal blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. It was laughably thin compared to the layered pelts the Vryn used, but it was all the human embassy had provided for her xenobiology research assignment. In the communal hall, the Vryn elders gathered around the ceremonial fire pit. Throck, the settlement's war chief, gestured dismissively toward the human quarters with one of his 4 muscular arms. The pink skin shivers beneath her pathetic covering. He growled, his fangs glinting in the firelight. How did such a weak species ever leave their homeworld? They have no fur, no natural armor, no claws. They bring thin fabrics to an ice world and expect to survive. The other warriors rumbled in agreement, their deep voices creating a bass chorus of contempt. The Vryn stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick gray fur that had evolved over millennia to withstand Chronarch's brutal climate. To them, humanity's fragility was both puzzling and amusing. Jennifer heard none of this mockery. She was too focused on calibrating her research equipment, studying the local ecosystem despite her chattering teeth. She had been sent to establish diplomatic and scientific relations with the Vryn, but the cold was making everything exponentially harder. Still, she persisted. That was what humans did. Jack, her research partner, had been caught in a storm 2 days prior while collecting samples in the northern valleys. The Vryn rescue team had found him unconscious, his thermal suit compromised. They'd brought him back wrapped in emergency foil, shaking their heads at human foolishness. He now recovered in the medical bay, his body temperature slowly returning to normal. Your partner nearly died, Throck had told Jennifer bluntly. And still you stay in your thin blanket doing your research. The word dripped with disdain. Perhaps humans are not just weak, but stupid as well. Jennifer had simply nodded and returned to her work. She couldn't argue with his assessment of their physical limitations. Humans weren't built for Chronarch 7, but they had come anyway, because understanding the universe was worth the risk. What the Vryn adults didn't notice, but what Jennifer had observed, were the cubs. Young Vryn, barely past their naming ceremonies, had been watching the humans with intense curiosity rather than contempt. They saw something the adults had missed. The smallest cub, Kira, had watched Jennifer work through the window for 3 days straight. She saw how the humans' hands never stopped moving despite the cold, how she documented everything with meticulous care, how she smiled at the cubs whenever they peeked in. Most importantly, Kira noticed how Jennifer always shared her food rations with the cubs when they came close, even though humans clearly needed every calorie to generate body heat. On the 4th night, when the temperature plummeted to dangerous levels and Jennifer's quarters felt like a freezer, she heard a scratching at her door. Opening it, she found Kira and 5 other cubs, each dragging pelts twice their size. For you, Kira said in halting standard, her voice high and uncertain. You a cold, we bring warm. Jennifer's eyes widened as the cubs struggled to push the heavy pelts inside. These weren't just any furs. They were pristine winter coats from the great horn beasts of the northern plains, each worth a small fortune in Vryn culture. I can't accept these, Jennifer protested, but Kira was insistent. You give food, we give warm, is fair? The cub tilted her head, her large amber eyes pleading. Jennifer felt her throat tighten. She knelt down to the cub's level. It's more than fair. Thank you. That night, wrapped in the magnificent pelts, Jennifer slept soundly for the first time since arriving on Chronarch 7. The cubs had done what the adults had refused to consider. They had helped simply because it was the right thing to do. Word spread quickly through the settlement. By morning, Throck stood at Jennifer's door, his expression unreadable. Behind him, Kira cowered, clearly expecting punishment for giving away valuable pelts without permission. The cubs have shamed us, Throck said finally, but his tone wasn't angry. It was contemplative. They saw what we refused to see. You humans may be physically weak, but you came to our world not to conquer or to prove superiority. You came to learn, to understand, and you shared what little you had with our young ones. He paused, his forearms crossed. Perhaps we have been judging strength by the wrong measure. A species that can survive the cold of space, that can adapt to worlds not their own, that can persist despite every disadvantage. He gestured to the pelts. That is a different kind of strength. When Jack recovered and heard the story, he laughed despite his still aching limbs. "Leave it to kids to understand what adults can't," he said. "Every species in the galaxy and children are still the ones who see the truth first." Jennifer smiled, running her hand over the soft pelts. The cubs had given her more than warmth. They had given her hope that understanding between species wasn't just possible, it was inevitable, one act of kindness at a time. From that day forward, the Vryn elders no longer mocked the humans' thin blankets. Instead, they invited Jennifer and Jack to their fires, eager to learn about a species that could be so vulnerable yet so unyielding. And Kira became Jennifer's constant companion, a bridge between two worlds built on the simple foundation of compassion. The ice wind still howled outside, as brutal as ever. But inside the settlement, something had changed. The humans no longer faced the cold alone.